My wife mocked my sterility with a pregnancy. I exposed her cheating with our neighbor, revealed the hospital scam, and filed for divorce as revenge. My wife recently told me she's expecting a baby. The twist? I know I can't be the dad because, well, I'm unable to have kids. Despite that shocker, I decided to just go with the flow. We tied the knot about 2 years back after being together for 3 years. She was really into the idea of getting married, way more than me, but I went along with it to make her happy. Then, about a year ago, she was all about starting a family. So we gave it a shot. Trying for a baby turned out to be super tough, and it was rough on me, especially mentally. Things got so intense that I decided to get checked out. Meanwhile, my wife started acting out big time, which made the whole situation even harder to handle. A couple of days after getting tested, a doc hits me with the news I'm sterile. That was a huge blow, even though the whole baby thing wasn't my idea to begin with. I'd warmed up to the thought of being a dad. Finding out I couldn't be one was just crushing. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I was dreading telling my wife the truth. Given how she'd been acting, I was really worried about how she'd take it. I was steeling myself to break the news to her, but then she drops her own bombshell on me. Just 4 days after finding out I was sterile, she comes to me saying she's got big news. So there I was, absolutely floored when my wife hits me with the news that she's pregnant. My mind was racing because for a split second I thought she had somehow figured out that I can't have kids. But nope, she was just super excited to tell me we were going to have a baby. Inside, I was a complete mess. But on the outside, I had to slap on a smile and pretend to be just as thrilled, not wanting to give her any reason to suspect something was off. But man, the very next day I was back at the doctor's office, getting myself checked out again because I needed to be 100% sure that I wasn't the father due to my sterility. And just like before, the test confirmed my fears. I'm indeed sterile. This pretty much turned my world upside down because it meant that the only logical explanation was my wife was seeing someone else behind my back. The whole idea of her getting some kind of fertility treatment without me knowing was out of the question. Those treatments cost an arm and a leg, and I'm the one who handles our finances. There's no way she could have afforded that without coming to me for the money. So the thought of her cheating started to eat away at me. It was such a bizarre and painful idea that I kind of just froze up. I didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, my wife was on cloud 9, planning this huge party to announce her pregnancy to the world. Here I was, feeling like I was falling apart on the inside, but I had to keep up appearances and act all happy and supportive on the outside. I had to keep this whole mess under wraps. It was way too personal and embarrassing to even think about sharing with my family or anyone else, really. I couldn't bring myself to confront my wife about my suspicions either. Too much time had passed, and part of me was just too scared to face the truth head on. Plus, I was really curious to figure out who the other guy was. The whole situation was just insane. I felt stuck in this weird limbo, trying to act normal while my head was spinning with all these questions and doubts. So here's the scoop. I was seriously wigging out about confronting my wife. I mean, if I just blurted out my suspicions, there was a real risk she'd just up and leave, and then where would I be? Left in the dark. That's where. But man, I didn't have to wait too long to start putting the puzzle pieces together. We threw this big bash to let everyone know about the baby. And it was like the who's who of our lives showed up. Family, buddies, a couple of folks from work, and even the neighborhood crew made the list. Now, this one neighbor of ours, he's not your average Joe. The dude is 27, looks like he walked straight off a fashion runway, and yeah, he's actually trying to make it big in the modeling world. Talk about aiming high, right? He's living with his aunt right across our doorstep, all to be smack dab in the middle of the city buzz, since his own fam is pretty much out in the boonies. My wife, bless her, has always been super kind to him, making sure he and his aunt felt right at home when they first moved in. She'd whip up meals for them, and we've even had the guy over for dinner a few times, chatting up a storm about his modeling gigs and all. Turns out, he's also into literature, just like my wife. So you can imagine they hit it off like two peas in a pod right from the get-go. I never really thought much of it. He seemed like a stand-up guy, and I had full trust in my wife. But then, fast forward to our party, and the moment he steps through the door, it's like the atmosphere just shifts. My wife's face lights up in a way that's hard to miss. She zooms over to him, and their hug, let's just say it wasn't your garden variety friendly hug. It lasted way longer than what you'd expect for a casual, hey, good to see you. Oddly enough, it seemed like I was the only one picking up on this vibe, but it set off all kinds of alarm bells in my head. It was clear as day. Something was up between them. And now, I was on a mission to figure out what that something was. So here's what went down. I made up some story about needing to step out for a bit, pretending I was headed to catch the train. But instead of hitting the road, I sneaked off to our bedroom to have a little snoop session on my wife's laptop. You see, right after she hit me with the news that she was expecting, I managed to have a sneaky peek at her phone while she was catching some Z's. Didn't find anything out of the ordinary then, but getting my hands on her laptop, that was a whole different game. Every time I was hanging around, she was practically glued to that screen, either binge-watching something or typing away like she was on a deadline. Curiosity got the better of me more than once, and I'd ask her what she was up to. Quick as a flash, she'd tilt the screen away and hit me with, "Oh, just working on my novel." A line she'd been feeding me for months. I respected her space and genuinely thought she was pouring her heart into some epic story. But with all the weird vibes floating around, I started to suspect that novel was just a smokescreen for whatever was really going on in that laptop. Turns out, getting into her laptop was a breeze. No password, no nothing. After a bit of detective work, I hit the jackpot, a secret email account tucked away from her usual one. I dove into this hidden inbox and man, was it a goldmine. It was crammed with love notes back and forth between her and our neighbor, the dude who could easily be mistaken for a Greek god or something, given he's trying to break into modeling. The guy wasn't exactly James Bond when it came to keeping things on the down low. His email was basically his name. And right there in the more recent emails was the bombshell. She told him about the baby. He was clearly not thrilled, looking to hit the eject button, given the sudden ghosting act that followed. But my wife, she wasn't about to let him slip away that easily. Then came the gut punch. An email where she's talking about hitting up a lawyer friend to start divorce proceedings once the baby's born. Talk about a plot twist. I was looking for answers, but man, I wasn't ready for this level of drama. All right, let's rewind and dive into this whole mess. So my wife was really pushing for us to have a baby, right? But here's the kicker. The whole baby-making campaign wasn't about us or some cozy family picture. Nah, it was all about setting herself up for a sweet deal. She had this whole plan mapped out in her head where she'd bag alimony and child support from me post-divorce. Then, with that cash in her pocket, she'd swoop off with our neighbor, Mr. Model in the making, and live out her so-called happily ever after. Finding that out by stumbling on an email? Yeah, felt like getting sucker punched in the stomach. And that queasy feeling, it just loves to make encores every time I replay that discovery in my head. But no way was I going to let that slide and wallow in self-pity. I snapped into action, took a ton of pics of that damning email with my phone, and slipped her laptop back where it belonged, acting like nothing happened. The cheating part, honestly, it stung less than the whole elaborate job she was pulling. Stepping out is one thing, but plotting to have a kid with me as part of some grand scam to finance her dream life with Loverboy, that's a whole new level of twisted. And let me tell you, my wife could give those Hollywood stars a run for their money with the act she was putting on. I hadn't smelled a rat until then. The more I thought about it, her being all sunshine and rainbows started to look downright eerie. But as boiling mad as I was, I decided to play the long game. I wasn't about to let her off the hook easy. She needed to get a taste of her own medicine, feel a bit of the sting of betrayal and frustration that had become my constant companion since uncovering her little scheme. So call me crazy, but I doubled down on the husband of the year act. For the next 9 months, I was Mr. Supportive, the ideal soon-to-be dad, sticking by her side. Every lie she told, every fake smile she threw my way just added fuel to my resolve. I was all in, attending every prenatal checkup, making sure she was on top of her vitamin game, basically nailing the supportive partner role. Then D-Day arrived. She started her labor. Despite the whirlwind of emotions and the nagging voice in my head reminding me of the whole charade, I shoved all that aside. I took a deep breath, stepped up, and drove her to the hospital all by myself. It was game time, and even though I was a bundle of nerves, I was determined to see this through to the end. I made sure to give her parents the heads up about the hospital run, but deliberately left my own fam out of the loop. Honestly, I just couldn't deal with the thought of them being there if things went sideways and got all kinds of dramatic. Her folks were an hour's drive away, which meant we had a bit of a grace period, just me and her. And man, did I have a plan for that alone time. Right after we got her settled into the hospital room, I threw her for a loop. I acted all nonchalant and mentioned I was going to hit up our neighbor, Mr. Handsome Neighbor, to come by and support her. The look on her face was something else. She was totally flustered, trying to brush off the idea, saying something about not wanting some stranger around during such an intimate moment. That's when I decided to drop the bomb. I showed her the cold, hard evidence of my fertility test, proof that I couldn't father a child, And to add to the drama, I whipped out the divorce papers I had filed just before her due date. She looked through all the paperwork, completely dumbfounded, so I broke it down for her, spelled out that there was zero chance I was the father of her baby, and then laid out the juicy part about the emails I'd found in her secret account. Watching the realization hit her was like watching a live drama unfold. The look on her face? Absolutely unforgettable, but I didn't stick around to savor the moment. I just walked out, leaving her to marinate in the mess. Next up, I made a quick call to our neighbor, letting him know his maybe baby mama was in labor. Didn't even wait for his reaction. I just hung up and made a beeline for my car. I waited out in the parking lot just long enough to see her dad's car pull in, and then I was out of there faster than you can say soap opera twist. I even went full spy mode and turned off my phone, not in the mood for calls or being tracked down, and drove straight to a motel a decent distance away. I had the foresight to pack some essentials a few weeks back, stashing them in my car, ready for a moment exactly like this. So there I was, holed up in a motel room far from the eye of the storm with everything I needed to start figuring out my next moves. After the whole hospital drama, I spent the rest of the day just zoning out in front of the TV, knocking back a few beers and doing pretty much anything to keep my mind off the craziness. That night, I actually managed to sleep pretty well, feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders now that I was through with playing the part. The next morning, feeling a bit more like myself, I decided it was time to face the music and switch my phone back on. As expected, it blew up with notifications. Tons of messages from my wife and the neighbor guy. I didn't even bother checking those, just the thought of it drained me. However, I did notice some messages from my folks and my brother. Looks like my wife tried to get in touch with them when I went MIA. So I figured the least I could do was give them a call back, let them know I was okay, and head over to explain this whole mess. I even suggested they get my brother over so I could lay everything out on the table for all of them at once. When I got to my parents' place, my brother was already there. They all had this mix of confusion and annoyance on their faces, understandable given from their point of view. I just skipped out on the birth of what they thought was my kid, robbing them of the chance to be there for the grandchild's arrival too. But I took the time to spell out the entire saga for them from start to finish, including why I did what I did. By the end of my tale, they were all just sitting there, kind of stunned. I braced myself for a storm of questions or even some heat for how I handled things, but it never came. The only thing my dad managed to say was that he hoped things wouldn't get any messier than they already were. Nobody else really had much to say after that, so it seemed like they were at least trying to understand where I was coming from. That catch-up happened a few days ago. Since then, my family's been pretty quiet about the whole thing. On the other hand, my wife's been laying it on thick, accusing me of totally ruining her big moment of becoming a mom for the first time ever since I bailed from that whole hospital scene. My phone's been blowing up. My wife's been on a mission, calling and texting nonstop, trying to get a hold of me, but I've just been ghosting her. And then, get this, even the neighbor dude shot me a text a few hours back. He's all like, "My wife's super upset, and we should try to put our beef to the side for her sake. Maybe even hash things out." I mean, seriously, the nerve of these folks, acting like I'm just throwing a fit over some small-time drama. The guy didn't stop there. He drops in his text that plot twist my wife supposedly started catching feelings for me again while she was pregnant. Like, out of nowhere, she's supposedly all about giving us another shot. Yeah, right. If that's the case, then why is he still lurking around, right? It just doesn't add up. Honestly, I can't help but laugh at how they think I'm going to fall for this. Sure, my wife's mad, but what am I supposed to do about that? It's not just about her being mad, though. She's ticked off because I've been onto their game from the jump, but still played the devoted husband role. She's throwing accusations, my way, saying I've been deceiving her by sticking around during the pregnancy, all the while knowing the kiddo isn't mine, and that she's been sneaking around with Mr. Model next door. It's like they expect me to just forget everything and come running back because they say so. But come on. After all that's gone down, they really think I'm naive enough to buy into this sudden change of heart? It's pretty clear they're scrambling, trying to paint me as the bad guy for not engaging in a little soap opera. But honestly, at this point, it's just more of the same drama, just a different day. Update 1, so it's been about a week since the baby arrived, and I've been camped out in a hotel room this whole time. I haven't made any moves to go see my wife, and honestly, I don't have any plans to. She keeps blowing up my phone with texts and calls, but I'm not sure why she's even bothering. I thought I made it crystal clear that I'm not up for chatting or listening to whatever she's got to say. I haven't gone as far as blocking her number yet, but I did block the neighbor after he decided to chime in, trying to guilt-trip me into going back to her, talking about how she's still holding on to some hope. I'm convinced the only reason he's hanging around, pushing for me to patch things up, is so she can scrape together something from the divorce, like alimony or whatever, especially since they're both pretty much not bringing in any dough. Look, my wife chose to be a stay-at-home partner, which was cool by me. I respected that choice. It's not like she was just home doing nothing, but yeah, turns out she was also stepping out on me, which is a deal breaker. And for the record, it wasn't me who pushed her to quit her job back when we were just dating and she was working. I was all for her career. She was the one who wanted to stop working and focus on the home front. I didn't object because I was doing all right financially, and it was her call. I'm banking on my lawyer being able to dodge the alimony bullet once we lay out the whole cheating scenario, which shouldn't be too hard to prove. Fingers crossed. As for the neighbor, the guy's still scrapping by, trying to land some decent modeling gigs. Figuring out how he's going to cover his bills, let alone support my wife and a baby, is going to be a circus, especially on their combined non-income. Well, good luck to them is all I can say. I'm just relieved to be stepping away from this dumpster fire, ready to wash my hands of the whole thing. No alimony, no nothing, not even a sliver of my attention. I'm really hoping my wife gets the message and doesn't drag this whole divorce thing out. But knowing how she sometimes doesn't think things through, I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to fight it. That said, I'm ready for whatever she throws my way. I've got all the evidence I need tucked safely on my phone and backed up on my laptop. Those emails from her secret account are going nowhere. Even if she gets smart and deletes her account, those screenshots are staying put with me, so I'm not sweating it. If push comes to shove, I might even agree to pay her some alimony just to get her out of my life for good. She ought to feel lucky, honestly. I've given her plenty of time to pack up and leave our place on her own terms. I had to kick her out, though, since the house is in my name. I'm just crossing my fingers that all this mess will be over soon. And would you believe it? Turns out I was spot on about her not having the best judgment. She wasn't happy with the settlement I proposed, which, by the way, was more than fair, just covering what she'd put in during our marriage. I don't know what she's expecting to happen here, but hey, if she thinks she can get more, good luck to her. She dropped me a message yesterday saying she'd left the house. I was kind of relieved, thinking she might have gone back to her folks or something, but nope. I found out today she just moved right across the street into the neighbor's place. So now I've got the pleasure of seeing her and her new beau's faces every day. Great, just what I needed. At one point, I actually thought about moving back into a hotel instead of staying in my own house because the situation was getting really uncomfortable. But then I thought, hey, this is my home. I have every right to be here. I'm not going to leave just because things are getting tough. I did wonder, though, why my wife didn't just go stay with her parents. That would have made more sense, especially since staying with our neighbor could mess up her side of the divorce case even more. It seemed like she was just making everything harder for herself. But I didn't spend too much time worrying about it. As I was going through a ton of messages I hadn't read yet, I found one from my wife's dad among them. I hadn't replied to a bunch of texts from different people over the last few days, so I almost missed his message. His message was really long. He was saying how sorry he was about what his daughter, my wife, had done. He told me they didn't agree with her actions at all. Hearing this from her dad meant a lot to me. It made me feel like my feelings were understood. I was so touched that I almost started crying, but I managed to hold back the tears. He even said he was cutting her off financially because she told him she wanted to fight the divorce. Nothing my wife was doing seemed to make any sense to me. It all looked like it was going to blow up in her face eventually. I mean, she had to know that, right? Unless she's either not thinking clearly or she's planning something really sneaky. I hope it's not the sneaky thing, but knowing her, I wouldn't be surprised. She's basically the worst. Living like this is for sure going to cause a bunch of problems. I bet they're going to try and mess with me, make me feel bad or jealous. But I've made up my mind to not let them bother me. I know they're just looking for ways to use my reactions against me. Despite all this drama, I'm actually saving a ton of money by not having to pay for another place to live. It's been a month since we started talking about how to split everything in the divorce, and it's not looking good for my wife. I've managed to show that she was cheating on me, and get this, she even made it easier for me by moving in with the guy she was accused of cheating with, so there's no doubt I'm right about her cheating. She tried to flip the script by claiming I was an alcoholic, which she said made me unable to have kids. She argued that's why she cheated, because I supposedly became mean and bitter when we were trying to have a baby, but that lie fell apart really fast. Everyone knows I stopped drinking last year when we decided to try for a kid, and I haven't had a drink since then. Honestly, I have no idea why she thought her plan would work. It was a pretty bad move on her part. It seems like she was just throwing out anything she could think of because her original plan flopped big time. Now she's too caught up in being a mom to try and come up with any clever schemes. Plus, the guy she's with isn't exactly the brightest, so there they are. So both me and my wife knew that her chances of getting any money from me after the divorce were pretty much gone. I think she must have told her boyfriend about this because just a few days ago he kicked her out of his place in a really mean way, along with her baby. Yep, there was a lot of yelling and screaming coming from their house that I could hear. And then, in just a few minutes, I saw my wife and her little boy being pushed out onto the street while the guy was yelling really awful stuff at her, calling her all sorts of terrible names. I was watching this mess from my living room window. The moment I saw him pushing my wife out the door while she was holding the baby, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't stand by and watch a little baby get caught up in adult problems. By the time I got over there, he had already slammed the door in their faces, leaving my wife and her son crying outside. I picked up the baby and took my wife's hand, leading them back to my place across the street. Then I called her dad to come and pick her up, which he did in about an hour. He thanked me a lot for helping them out. During that hour, my wife was crying a lot, almost as much as the baby, so I ended up trying to calm them both down. I thought about calling the police, but she begged me not to because she didn't want any more drama. She kept saying sorry for everything that had happened, telling me she was so desperate to be with the guy she loved that she